Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game So today we're going to be doing this series, Big Decomp Energy, where I take a look at some decomps, recomps, and PC ports. Today we're going to be going over 4 more decomps in active development, or at least for this video, 3 decomps in active development, and 1 question mark. Because to say these PC ports and recomps and all this decomp news would be all the rage in 2025 and 2026 would be an understatement. And the only reason I gave you 2 years there is because I'm making this right around Christmas, and I'm not sure if I'm going to air it in 2025 or next year. So I kind of covered all my bases there. But let's jump right in and talk about some of these projects because honestly, I know you're going to be excited for them. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support that channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But the first game we're going to be talking about today is The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, and I totally understand this game's reputation is definitely mixed out there on the internet. I remember being super excited to play this when it came out, and while I did have fun with it, I kind of found it to maybe not be the best 3D Zelda game I've ever played. So imagine if people could go in there, decomp the entire thing, and then bring it back out onto PC so that people could mod it and kind of have a little bit more fun with it. Because this game has definitely been broken wide open by speedruns doing some crazy things with the actual game, but now imagine if there was the ability for people just to go in and kind of fix some of the issues with Skyward Sword in and of itself. But do remember, just because a game is decompiled 100%, in this instance it's not 100% yet, does not mean it's guaranteed to get a PC port or a recomp, and even if it does, that means people would have to go in and make some mods and changes to kind of improve the overall structure and experience of Skyward Sword. And the reality is, if you didn't like this game back on the Wii, there's nothing about a PC port or a static recomp that's going to make you fall in love with it here. But if we take a look at the GitHub page here, and I will leave links in the description to all of these, you will see it was updated last week as of the recording of this audio, and it is getting relatively far along in the process, but still hovering below that 50% mark. But again, this is definitely all progress, and it definitely is going to be useful in the future, because we're not going to be talking about decomps, recomps, and PC ports in 2026 alone. This is going to be a subject that's going to basically go probably for like the next 10 to 15 years as people get better at these and we get more projects. But as of today, Skyward Sword is 22.83% decompiled and 14.16% fully linked, and you're going to have 100% of link to be able to play a Zelda game, because of course he is the main character. But if you take a look here at the heat map, and I will leave links for all of these again in the description below, you can kind of navigate around and see exactly what's been decompiled. If it's green, it's finished. If it's blue, it's in process. If it's black, it hasn't been touched whatsoever. Now, I'm sure this is going to take the next 6, 12, 18 months to probably see 100% completion, and don't forget, just because active development is going on now does not mean that people won't abandon it in the future, so nothing is guaranteed. Let's switch over genres completely and switch developers as well, because Code Veronica X is also being decompiled actively. And the interesting thing is, you have to remember, some of these games are cross-platform. Obviously Skyward Sword, as well as Luigi's Mansion, which you saw in the beginning of this video, they do not exist on other consoles outside of Nintendo hardware. But something like Code Veronica X here, it's going to be available on Dreamcast, it's going to be available on GameCube, and PlayStation 2 as well. So sometimes when people are decompiling projects, you might see decomp information from more than one version of the game. Sometimes projects will focus on all of the releases, sometimes projects will focus on just a singular release, and sometimes you'll have 2 different development groups working on the same game but different versions of the game, sometimes communicating to help each other, other times actually acting basically as their own unique entities. But that really is fun, and honestly, Code Veronica could use something like a PC port or a recomp where there is modability, because it seems like Capcom and all of the Resident Evil remakes just basically pretends Code Veronica does not exist whatsoever. I absolutely love this game on Dreamcast. It is one of my favorite Resident Evil games of all time, and it is to me at least disappointing that this isn't something that we don't have better versions of. And don't get me wrong, the original RE2, RE3, those remakes are awesome, but so are the original titles. But I'd love to live in a universe where Capcom actually cared enough about Code Veronica to give us that remake, because at this point in time, they're basically damn near out of Resident Evil games to remake for a modern audience. And sure, Resident Evil Requiem is on its way, but I'd still love to see Code Veronica X. So just so you know, in this instance, I am playing the GameCube version of the game just because I find that one ever so slightly better than the Dreamcast release, and definitely better than the PlayStation 2, but you leave me a comment down below and you tell me what you think. But here kind of is the fun part about Decomps. You have the Dreamcast version of the game, you have the GameCube version of the game, and of course you have the PlayStation 2 version as well. And depending on when you grew up and what hardware you had, your experience with Code Veronica is going to be across one of these platforms. But the fun thing about talking about the Decomp here is I'm actually talking about 2. That's why in the beginning I said 4 Decomps in active development, or technically 3 with a question mark, and that's kind of just a little bit of fun I had at the beginning of the video, because there is an active Decomp in process for the GameCube version of Code Veronica X, and that is based on the PlayStation 2 version. So on the GitHub page for the GameCube Decompilation, it says it's meant to be complementary to the PlayStation 2 version of the game. So if we hop over to the GitHub for the PS2 version, you will see that this is more decompiled than the GameCube version of the game is. So you have 2 different projects targeting the same game across 2 different platforms. On the GameCube, you're about 12%, and here on PlayStation 2, you're at about 24.75% of the actual game code. So that means there's 2 different projects for Code Veronica trying to decompile the entirety of the game so that sometime in the future it could get a static recomp or a PC port. Who is going to win first? I have absolutely no idea. Maybe both projects will finish the same day. Maybe neither of them will actually ever be completed. I just want you to realize, just because I talk about these things being in active development again, does not mean they will ever actually see the finish line. And that was clearly a cheap pun to get us over to our next decomp, Need for Speed Most Wanted. And this is definitely fun for me just because I absolutely love the racing genre. If you watch my channel, you know arcade racing and home console racing in the arcade kind of vibe is one of my favorite types of games to play. So think about all of those amazing racing games that came out on consoles like the GameCube, PlayStation 2 or otherwise that could be decomped and then ported over to PC. Because for a lot of these games, that's basically the only time they ever release, and I want a bunch of racing games in 16:9 with 60 to 120 frames per second and a ton of visual enhancements. I just think they would help them have a much longer life, because I absolutely love playing Most Wanted back on the GameCube when I had one, and it's one of those things when I jump back in, it is a fun time, but I just think to myself how much cooler this could be if it was on a modern PC port with all the bells and whistles. And I get some of the Need for Speed games came over to PC, but a lot of them can be a little tricky to run these days versus an actual native PC port of the GameCube code, where you wouldn't really have to argue with all of those legacy executables, which absolutely can drive you nuts on PC and spend a lot of time just trying to get them to run. So you'll see here 2 days ago it says 10% game code, and that definitely is a nice milestone. That is 1/10 of the way there, and that is always fun. Now again, you'll see here this is decompilation for the GameCube, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 2 versions of Need for Speed Most Wanted, but currently it just focuses on the GameCube version. So you'll see here it says 8.47 on this page, but it says 10% on the GitHub, so sometimes these percentages don't actually update at the same rate, so we'll take it with their word that it's 10% done over on their GitHub page. If we take a look at the heat map, you're going to see not a lot of it's actually been done, but 10% is definitely a nice milestone, and hopefully we'll see some more updates on this, because as these projects get closer to the finish line, again, pun intended for underground, it's one of those things. I will continue to update the videos to show you guys some more of the progress we're actually getting on this. But again, I can just imagine this, even in ultra-wide 4K resolution, 60 to 120 frames per second, using a wheel on my PC, and just having an absolute blast. But you leave me a comment down below and you tell me if you could snap your fingers and make one arcade racing game show up as a recomp or PC port, which one would it be? I'm just going to have to go with Rush 2 on N64 because I love that game, but it's definitely hard to go back to. But if they had a new version of it, I'd absolutely jump back in and play the ever-loving hell out of it. But for the last game in this video, we're going to be talking about Luigi's Mansion, and if you remember at the beginning of the video, I said 3 active decomps and 1 with a question mark, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But honestly, Luigi's Mansion is one of my favorite Nintendo franchises. It just has so much charm, so much flair, and such a unique gameplay element, and obviously the original Luigi's Mansion back on GameCube could definitely use some improvements. I could see some areas in which they could borrow models from the Switch version, bring them into this, and then basically just make a master version of Luigi's Mansion. There'd be so many fun changes and pivots you could actually make to the formula here, and I think the game could definitely benefit from it. Again, it works amazingly on Dolphin. I totally get that all of these games emulate perfectly well, but PC ports and recomps are just a lot of fun and allow for almost ultimate moddability of the titles. This is the type of thing, and I know Dolphin has a VR version. I'd love to be able to see this thing as a PC port running in 4K at like 120 frames per second, and then injecting that into a VR mod where you can kind of look down onto Luigi like he is in a little tiny diorama. I totally get I'm just talking about wishlist things here, not things that are likely to happen, but that is kind of the fun about recomps and PC ports in the future. You kind of have the sky's the limit approach to what could be done, and then people decide what they're actually going to do from there. But I love Luigi's Mansion. It's one of my favorite Nintendo franchises, and I really hope we see a new game on the Nintendo Switch too, because I want to spend a little bit more time with Luigi. Although Professor Egad there definitely doing something highly inappropriate in the corner. So you'll see here that the note on GitHub says this decomp project has been stopped due to lost interest and drama that pushed it, but then in a second section it's going to say it's still in active development. So this one definitely was a question mark, and it's just kind of part and parcel how it can be difficult to track these projects, and if this has been abandoned somebody else can pick it up, but right now it's 7.02% decompiled with almost 7% linked. And it's always fun to go through these heat maps, even if a lot of things might not make sense as you read them, because it just gives you a really good visual indicator of how things work. And you'll see here, pad reset, pad callback. This is just the controller input parsing code so that the actual game can read the controller inputs and understand what to do with them when you're actually pressing them in game, because that's a whole set of code underlying anything else. But those are the 4 decomps in active development, and technically I am telling the truth because there's both the PlayStation 2 and GameCube decomps of Code Veronica, so if Luigi's Mansion has been abandoned, I still get that asterisk in saying, I told you the truth. You leave me a comment down below and you tell me which one of these on the video you'd like to see first, but I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye-bye.